Greetings, everybody. Welcome to Chaos Incorporated. This is your economic update for October 13th in the year of our Lord 2025. Markets are riled up. Last week, we just saw massive contagion spread over a few things. The big headline news is the rare earth block out of China. Trump counters with, we're going to add another 100% in tariffs. That would bring it up well over 200% for some items that would be tariffed out of China. He has since pulled back on that. I'm going to cover the rare earth. I'm going to cover potential systemic credit crisis within private lending. That has gone on, gotten a lot of attention. I mean, that's really where the market started to tank. Then I'll cover the AI bubble in particular. And so there's three things we'll talk about. Not too much geopolitics today. Obviously, big news in that front with potential ceasefire, end of hostilities in Israel. Believe it when I see it. And then we've got 10,000 troops and a bunch of naval assets around Venezuela right now. My thought process there is eventually we're going to do something. We're going to replace Maduro. We're going to get a puppet in there. We're going to turn over the oil companies to the major American big oil. We probably will take an American government stake in those projects, be given to us. There's $10 trillion in oil reserves there. So my just speculation is that the Trump administration is thinking, how do we get out of this $37 trillion in debt? We're going to just take the Venezuelan oil. We're also going to dominate the Western Hemisphere. You're seeing Trump is pulled back from Ukraine. He's saying, Europe, it's your baby now. I'll sell you weapons, but you're going to pay for them, and you got to buy all my gas. And Europe's going to be left holding the bag on Ukraine. And we're going to pivot to the Western hemispheric defense. That's all I'll cover today. I'm just quick on geopolitics. What's really going on is, which is also linked with geopolitics, is the rare earth battle out of China. So, I have a lot of experience in rare earth. I have more than a decade in metallurgy. Literally standing in foundries, running spectrometer tests, modifying materials. We use some rare earths. Rare earths are very, very complicated. They are China's real ace in the hole, so to speak. Rare earths, to give you a little background, it's basically 17 different materials. Most of them are in the lanthides section of your periodic table, if you guys remember that from high school. Dysprosium, neodymium, cerium, things like that. But you can break rare earth into two things: light rare earth, heavy rare earth. Light rare earth we have at the Mountain Pass mine in California. Not a big issue, but heavy rare earth is what we're lacking. And there's a lot of disinformation on X about, oh, rare earth is not so rare. There's a reason why it's called rare earths. And that's because the concentrations that they're found under. So at the best mines in China right now, like Baotou in Inner Mongolia, takes them around 17,000 metric ton of rock, and they have to crush that all into millimeter-sized pieces to just go through the extraction process to get 1 kg of rare earth material. That's world class. So yes, does Ukraine have rare earth? Yes. U.S. has heavy rare earth? Yes. But you'd have to crush 500,000 tons or 1,000,000 tons of rock. Okay, that's number one. So it's very rare in the concentrations that is needed to be able to mine the rare earth, make it economically feasible. If it was actually common, the Japanese wouldn't be doing offshore rare earth mining projects 5,000 meter deeps off their coast. Okay, so few places in the world have heavy rare earth. Australia's one. Vietnam has a bit, but China's really is the big player now. China, this is not a new thing. China sanctioned Japan on rare earth back in 2010. Japan imports around twice as many rare earths as we do in the United States, and that's due to automotive, precision manufacturing, and the electronics industries. So Japan has basically had a mini Manhattan project since 2010 to become self-sufficient in rare earth. None of it's found geologically speaking in Japan, but they've gone offshore in other areas to try to get it. And to this day, 15 years later, 90% of their rare earth is still heavy rare earth is still imported from China. Okay, rare earth is a geological problem and it's a technical problem. The geology side, as I mentioned, you have to have the concentrations high enough to make it economically feasible. And the technical side are on the purification standards. You need for a semi-grade level rare earth. By the way, a NVIDIA GPU has about 8 different rare earths in it. You need to extract, as I mentioned, 17,000 kg at best to get that 1 kg of material. Um, the purification tech, you have to get 99.9999% pure. You're talking about 1 or 2 parts per billion. Otherwise, when you dope a semiconductor chip with the rare earth material, it will cause problems with the electronics. So that's the level of purification technology that the U.S. has lost and not developed, and China has been developing for 30 years now. Case in point, General Motors actually had a company called MagnaQuench back in the 90s that did rare earth and pioneered rare earth magnets for the automotive industry. That was sold to the Chinese government back around 95, 96, and moved all the production was moved to China. So we kind of self-owned ourselves on that side. So to give you an example of how hard it is to purify this stuff, Korea has also had a major import of rare earth. They've had a mini Manhattan project to become self-sufficient in rare earth. They did a deal with Kazakhstan. The SK company, very highly technical EV battery company, electronics company. They got $3 billion from the U.S. from the Korean government. Did a Kazakhstan mine, and then failed. They failed on the purification tech of the material. The old Soviet era logistics out of Kazakhstan, they couldn't get material around efficiently, and it's basically a white elephant hanging around their necks. Okay, so solving the rare earth problem overnight is not going to be easy. It's going to be a minimum a decade. Okay, if it all happens. So why is that crucial? There's about 800 pounds of rare earth in an F-35. It's in aircraft engines, semiconductors, EV batteries, aviation engines, you name it. It's there. It's basically it's constitute a base material for advanced manufacturing. Not in large quantities, but highly useful in terms of going into alloys that help heat resistance or electrical stability within products. So that's why it's so crucial, especially heavy rare earth. And I talked about the geology. I talked about the technology. On the geology side, most of this is found in what they call monazite rock, which contains uranium and thorium. So the material is actually radioactive as well. So when you're extracting it, you got to keep that point in mind. Okay. The highly pollutive. You need to acid leach the rocks to get the material. Highly polluting industry. A lot of mining is polluting. Problem with the U.S. is we don't have the heavy rare earth to turn on. So I think U.S. the best case is work with Australia. Western Australia has heavy rare earth. And then if you can keep working on the purification technologies, there's literally one company in the world that does the purification level. That's called, it's a company out of Wuxi. So that's like about a couple hours west of Shanghai. And they're the only ones in the world that can process this stuff at the semi-grade levels. The Japanese are trying. They do have some small lab type output, but it's not enough. So this is the rare earth card China has to play. Why it's relevant is I don't believe the U.S. defense industry is going to get any rare earth going forward. They are going to put on export controls, not export bans. So if, say, Ford wants to buy 50,000 rare earth magnets, okay, that's going to be allowed, but it's going to be, okay, you have 0.3 gram of rare earth in that magnet, so they're going to track every rare earth shipment that goes out so that there's no cheating to order extra quantities and then sell it off into the market. So I don't believe defense companies will get them. They will threaten the chip makers. Okay, as I mentioned, there's eight rare earth used in NVIDIA GPUs. China could say, okay, if you're going to threaten us, if you're going to threaten Samsung, TSMC not to provide us product from our own chip makers. So then we'll just stop rare earth. Nobody will get chips. So they have this card. Why are they playing this card now? This is interesting. Helium is a huge product line used in MRIs, semiconductors, a lot of advanced manufacturing as well. 2022, China wanted to pull this card but didn't, and because of helium. So 80% of their helium was imported from U.S. companies. Helium is basically a byproduct of natural gas, and that's why it's coming from offshore. So they have now invested hugely since 2022 in new helium production facilities, so that they can make that for their own domestic purposes. The 80% import is down to about 20%. So I think from a helium standpoint, China no longer has that Achilles heel that they're worried about. So they're going to go, you're going after our chips, we'll stop your rare earth. That's going to be the main card. A subsegment of all this, yesterday, the Dutch government, you could say the government of Netherlands really, they confiscated a company, Nexpira, which was originally a Dutch semiconductor maker, but bought by Wingtech, Chinese manufacturer, years ago. I think about 5 years ago. It's not bleeding edge level chips. It's legacy nodes, but it's all important. They confiscated it under the auspices of transfer technology. I'm not so sure that was something to worry about. As I mentioned, it's legacy nodes, and Nexpira already has production lines in China, so it's kind of crazy. It's like, you're going to stop the Netherlands-based production, but they're just going to confiscate the Chinese production, so they're going to get what they wanted anyway. And you're going to suffer a massive retaliation. This is the Netherlands. How can China retaliate? Shell has 1,000 gas stations in China. They have LNG terminals. Unilever, Dove soap. They have $5 billion in sales. ING, the bank. They have 10 million customers in China. The list goes on. You can just give you an example. That's how open the Chinese economy really is. I mean, they have Dutch are major players in China. They have massive economic interests in China, which they're going to now just burn to the ground for some crazy reason. ASML, of course, China wants the ASML machines from Holland, so I don't think there'll be any moves made there. But we'll see. This is reaching new escalation in terms of just confiscating companies, nationalizing them. This is like, usually you go from tariffs to nationalization and then to war. That's really the footing that we're on. So this is the rare earth. This is the China trade war. We're basically two cars headed for a collision. Hopefully we can get some de-escalation, and then so we stop burning down the global economy. Things don't look good anywhere. China, Europe, U.S., everything's pretty much in tatters. I'll talk about that in a minute. So yeah, that's the rare earth. Before we go on to that, I'll talk about this private credit. So before the China tariff things came out last week, and let the markets on fire, private credit was letting the market on fire. So what happens, a company called First Brands went Chapter 11 a few weeks ago. There's another company called Tricolor that went bankrupt a few weeks ago. First, I'll tell you about Tricolor. Tricolor was a automotive dealer network, had about 60 dealerships. They had around $10 billion in financing from many, many different creditors. Their focus market was illegal immigrants and recent immigrants. Not a lot of paperwork done. Loose auditing standards, loose lending standards. They went bankrupt, and then all the cars off the lots disappeared and were driven to Mexico. So, not covered very much in the media, but this has sent shockwaves through the private credit markets because someone's holding a $10 billion bag right now. There's nothing to get back. Another interesting private credit story went across the wire last week was a company that's called First Brands, as I'd mentioned. They are probably the largest automotive aftermarket company in the United States. They supply all the major companies. They're claiming Chapter 11 due to tariffs. And then because they were so successful growing, they ran out of money. When the auditors now are still going through the books, it's a shocking $2.3 billion that's gone missing. In fact, one of the lawyers said, is there any evidence that the $2 billion was sent and received, and how much are creditors going to get back? They said no and nothing. So this is a leaked email that's been going around the internet. This has led to more shocking allegations. Double PO financing. That's where you take a receivable and you finance it with a bank. They took the same receivable, went to many different banks to finance the same receivable. Over invoicing customers ahead of time, fake inventory, tariff cheating. There's all kinds of allegations around this company now, and I think people are looking at around a $5 billion hole. So there's real companies, there's real brands, but the financial shenanigans that have gone on, just incredible. Now, people I talk to tell me this is not systemic. This was a private founder company, so it was a lot loosey goosey on the rules, whereas private equity companies are going to be much more strictly controlled. Let's hope that's the case. We now live in a world of, we've been in a speculation economy for 40 years. There's now more private equity companies than McDonald's franchises. There's 18,000. There's all these creditors trying to throw money around, put it on the street to make returns, and it's like the same thing as the mortgage crisis where you had 100 companies owning the same mortgage, or owning the same piece of mortgage. The one real asset gets spread around 100 different financial money printing companies, right? Speculation companies. So the private credit markets, are they systemic now? No. Is there things to worry about? I believe so. You have five companies now at the top, right? You look up Apollo Global, these kind of companies. These guys have $1 trillion of asset under management now. They're just massive. And they're out throwing credit around on the streets. They're buying U.S. housing. There's some markets in U.S. housing where they own 50%, not Apollo, but private equity investors. They own 50% of the housing market in some zip codes. And now they're selling. They've turned to net sellers to get out of this risk. But when you talk about five, six companies with $1 trillion in assets, and this goes all underwater because they haven't done their due diligence or they're investing in things they don't know. They used to just buy stocks, and now they're putting out money into companies that do they really know what they're doing. This could be the next systemic crisis that nobody sees coming. This is private credit, basically, that's just all over the states. So we'll see how those two show up. Hopefully, I would get worried if I see another two or three companies pop up in Chapter 11 that have a lot of financial management issues and fraud going on. If that happens, then it's Katie barring the door because it could get ugly. What could trigger that if not only have private credit, but you have an AI bubble? Okay, I love AI. I use it. It's great. It's functioning basically as replacing search at this point. It has huge potential for drug discovery, all kinds of stuff. But in its nascent phases where it's at today, it's really just an enhanced form of search, right? So that's where we are. But the money that they've spent, you're talking $500 billion in capital expenditure. They want to move it up to $1 trillion. You're seeing some late stage stuff where Nvidia is now buying up the companies that buy their chips. Okay, they're vendor financing. That's a red flag to me. And why do they have to do that? Because not a lot of people understand GPUs. So I had my own